And so we manage those problems.
Yeah, but like Wi-Fi, there's repeaters and booster technology and things like that that'll solve those problems.
That's right, right. Yes.
Next two questions, I believe, are for Jim.
Do you plan to service all of Texas? I guess that means
Actually, there was one
before that?
Yeah, in order to move to smart meter.
in order to move to smart meters, is there any costs involved? And if yes, how much to the consumer?
Sure, and I think my response will be similar to CenterPoint. Let me just go back to the long answer. 2005, the Texas legislature was very forward-looking and passed legislation that really created the incentive for utilities like Oncor and CenterPoint to move quickly to roll out smart meters. That legislation included provision to allow companies like Oncor and CenterPoint to utilize a surcharge mechanism as long as they met the criteria for the smart metering rule in the state. Basically, this surcharge is essentially a flat fee that each customer pays on a monthly basis, which pays for the capital investment, also pays for any of the IT back office system, and also accommodates the savings from, say, meter readers. So any cost savings are built into that. At the end of the day, for a residential customer in the Oncor system, that surcharge is $2.19 a month, which will be in effect for a total period of 11 years. The surcharge started in January of '09, and so the residential customer pays the $2.19 for the capital investment and any of the operational expenses and savings. Small commercial customers pay a little bit more than that, but generally a residential customer is at $2.19.
Thank you very much, Jim. I appreciate it. Our next question is, do you plan to service all of Texas? I know the total plan is for 6 million meters to roll out, and I think Oncor's at about 1.5 million, and CenterPoint's at about 1 million, so about halfway through. And of course, that doesn't include the meter readers that are being rolled out by the other TDSPs, as well as the co-ops and munis. But any comments about the coverage in Texas eventually?
Well, I think obviously Oncor and CenterPoint have their kind of regulated service area, so both of us plan to deploy meters to cover our entire service area. But Mark, to your point, I think it's just interesting to see what's happening in Texas. We've got the large investor-owned utilities rolling out smart meters. You've got municipals like San Antonio and Austin that are well down the road there. You've got co-ops like Bluebonnet and CoServe. So we've got I think a critical mass here in Texas of people moving forward with the adoption of smart meters here in Texas.
Good. The rollout seems to be, as a former chairman of the board of the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, I developed a lot of contacts across the nation in other, the California ISO, the New York ISO. When I look across the rollout of smart meters across the country on a per person ratio, Texas probably leads the nation. I've looked for this data, and I can't find any hard data because it's too hard to keep it up to date. I think California may have more meters rolled out physically, but on a per customer basis, I would say that Texas leads the nation. Would you guys agree with that?
Well, I don't want to necessarily get into a race between what's happening in Texas and what's happening in California. I think there are a lot of meters that are being deployed in both states.
Right.
There's a lot of functionality that's being looked at in both states, and I think both of us, the utilities in California, utilities here, are trying to bring benefits to the consumer as fast as we possibly can. So, like I said, I want to stay away from the race, but we do have functionality that's being deployed in both areas.
Thank you very much. Another question is, have you received any negative reaction or customer feedback on the surcharge? Have there been complaints about the surcharge?
Yes, we have. Really nothing lately, but when the surcharge was implemented in January of '09, there was some discussion. A meter is just like any other piece of capital investment that the utility makes. The old meter was paid for by consumers, as was the transformer and the distribution line. However, this surcharge mechanism does make that a more visible line item on the consumer's bill. The retailers have the choice to pass that along in any way they choose. Most have chosen to pass along in a very visible way, and if nothing else, it's a new line item that wasn't there before. And so there has been, especially up front, Mark, some discussion about really trying to educate consumers what this is for. But I guess I'd also say that when people understand kind of the economic benefits, again, in our case, it's say $2.19 a month. The 5% and 10% numbers I referenced earlier, for a residential consumer on Encore system, that 5% is roughly $8 a month. Obviously, 10% is $16 a month. So if you're able to get them to look at kind of the cost benefit of $2 a month versus a $16 savings, that kind of makes sense to most people.
So you're saying the consumers have always been paying for their meters. Just with this particular rollout, it happened to be accounted for as an individual line item on their bills. They saw it, whereas in their previous meters, it was just in the total bill.
That's right.
Oh, I see. The vendor industry. Oh, wait, here we have another question from one of our listeners. Is there an example of how much cost savings is possible with a smart meter? And do you have any numbers to substantiate that? Is there a goal? I heard earlier you say that there have been behavioral studies that just knowing what you're spending on discrete appliances can result in a 5 to 15% savings, just having an educated consumer. But do you have any other comments about the cost savings that are possible?
Well, I think the 5 to 10% range is like you said, but has been communicated and talked about. One of the things that we're working on right now with our 500 unit participants is we're going back and taking a look at their consumption and see if we can't determine how much they've actually saved or how much their consumption has changed. And our 500 unit program wasn't a statistically valid program, and so we'll get some indication of savings. We at Centerpoint are looking at a couple of additional pilots where we will actually try to determine statistically what having the device in the home can do for consumption, and the different types of messaging and the different types of instructions that we provide to consumers, and determine how those instructions might help reduce consumption. So we are heading that direction. I don't have any firm numbers right now.
Thank you. It's my understanding that the average residential consumer in the state of Texas consumes about 1,500 kilowatts in a month, and if you have a 10% rate, it's $150. So if you can save 5 to 10%, we're talking about $15, $20 a month, but that comes up to $200, $250 a year. That seems possible. So those numbers sound reasonable to you guys. And of course, many people have far greater savings potential. But it would be interesting to note. I mean, if I keep my house at 70 in August, if I turned it to 74, with these smart meters, I would actually learn exactly how much I'm saving by that discomfort.
And Mark, you mentioned kind of the raising the thermostat or dialing down the thermostat. I think one of the important things that consumers are learning is not just they don't have to be uncomfortable to save money. There's a lot of other ways that they can manage their energy usage, again, that makes sense for them without being uncomfortable. One is just awareness. People become aware of just how much energy these other devices in the home use, and they're able to use them more judiciously, if you will. Allow them to manage it, and I think with time of use rates coming on, as you mentioned, really provides more options for consumers to, again, if it makes sense to them, take advantage of these and save more money without even being uncomfortable.
Thank you. We have another question here from Kate. I like the references to consumer advocates, that's in quotes. Do both Centerpoint and Encore see these advocates as essential to the project's success?
Within Texas, during the development of all the requirements, while the TDSPs were working with the Public Utility Commission staff, and we're working with retail electric providers and other market participants, consumer advocates were involved in those conversations. In fact, the low income program is part of the input that we've got from our consumer advocates to make certain that demographic of our consumer base can benefit from this technology as well as others. So yes, we've been actively engaging.
Good. I know one of the comments here, or one of the subject matters that is being debated here at Metering America, is the sort of the trajectory and the velocity that the vendor community is moving ahead to create products that interact with what will be called the home area network, is already called the home area network by those who have them. Would y'all like to make any comments about your partners in the manufacturing and development world who are bringing consumer products to the market?
Well, this is Jim from Encore. I would just say that, as I mentioned, we've got nearly 20 devices from over a dozen manufacturers that have been tested to be fully operational on the Encore system. That number is just, it's on a curve going up. So there are more and more people that I think have been waiting for kind of some level of critical mass to have enough meters out there to get them closer to production. And I think we're seeing that now. I think between the million in Houston, the 1.5 million here in the North Texas area, plus what all the others are doing in the state, I think they see that there's critical mass. That's why we've had such an explosion in manufacturers coming forward to get their products interoperability tested and ready to go. So it's just been increasing by leaps and bounds.
Thank you. You know, a lot of new technologies have had demographic analyses that correspond their adoption to age and willingness to change and things like that. I kind of found one counterintuitive the other day because I bought my wife a Kindle and discovered that the average age of the Kindle buyer is 55 because older people tend to read more. So with that in mind, there's a question here. Through your surveys, have you been able to identify who are the early adopters in terms of age or any other demographic characteristic?
With the program that we've had with the 500, we did ask for demographics information. We've not analyzed that information yet. That's our program is still continuing. We're still working on, obviously, on the analysis of the information. I have seen over the last couple of weeks different reports about the type of consumer, and I think for the most part there is that young 25 to 40-year-old crowd that is tech savvy, and I think that those folks are the ones who are more than willing to grab a device, whether it be an iPad or an iPod or a Kindle, or in our case here, the energy management solutions. Grab the device and be willing to work with the device to save money and to manage their consumption.